The assembly. Left, right. Bradley's class tramped into the gym. They passed rows and rows of metal folding chairs, each holding a teacher with purple ankles. All Bradley could do was to stay in line and copy whatever his classmates did. They stared forward, so he stared forward. They marched in unison, so he marched in unison. They stood as straight as yardsticks before the stage, and so did he. 4 teachers sat on the stage. One teacher holding a clipboard stood. She stepped behind a podium and spoke into a microphone. Good afternoon, teachers. The microphone squealed, causing the audience of teachers to giggle and make faces to cover their ears with their hands. My name is Miss Attendance, said the woman with the clipboard. Say here when I call your name. Miss Arithmetic. Here, piped a high voice in the middle of the gym. During roll call, Bradley's belly was as tight as a spitwad. He prayed none of the teachers would notice his knees shaking or the drops of sweat running down his forehead. He scarcely breathed until Miss Attendance called, Mr. Zero, and a teacher in back shouted, Present! Thank you, teachers, said Miss Attendance. Everyone is here today. Next, the second teacher on the stage stood. The gym erupted with wild applause, whistles, and hoots as she stepped behind the podium. Bradley recognized her at once, Mrs. Goldstar. Today is the conclusion of your training here at the Small Citizens School of Official Learning, otherwise known as capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital O, capital L. So from now on, you will not be just teachers, but school teachers. Repeat that, please. School teachers, the teachers chorused. The head teacher pointed her ruler at Bradley's class. Before you stands a typical class of juveniles, she said. We brought these specimens to our island so that you could practice giving a typical lesson during a typical day at a typical capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital O, capital L. And you all performed typically. There came more clapping and cheering from the crowd. However, these typical children did not eat a typical lunch, said Mrs. Goldstar. No, we served them our special crab applesauce. So, when they leave Apple Island in a few hours, they will remember nothing. Tonight, when these typical juveniles return home, their typical parents will ask them a typical question, what happened at school today? And they will reply, nothing, the typical answer. Another thunderous ovation filled the gym. So, already Operation Misteach is underway. Already a small, select team of crabby teachers has joined real capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital O, capital L's in a place called America. Repeat that, please. America, chanted the teachers. Now it is your turn to leave Apple Island, said Mrs. Goldstar. You will enter a real capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital L, and begin teaching our Miss lessons. Soon every school child will know what we want them to read. They will believe only what we want them to believe. And read what we want them to read. Operation Misteach will give us power. Operation Misteach will give us control of all capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital L's. Operation Misteach will give us control over the entire world. This sent the army of teachers into a wild frenzy. They began banging on their metal seats, stomping their feet, whistling their fingers, and chanting, Misteach, 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 Misteach. The head teacher slapped her golden ruler on her palm. Shh! Quiet, everyone, she said. Now, lady and man teachers, it's time to introduce our first guest instructor. Here's a teacher we all know and adore, the inventor of the test you will be giving in your new schools. Spelling tests, multiplication tests, essay tests, achievement tests, etc. Repeat that, please. Spelling test, multiplication test, essay test, achievement test, etc., chanted the audience. Now here she is, Miss Exam. Good afternoon, fellow teachers, said the short, bony teacher who stood at the podium. I'm here to teach you how to give tests. First, you will be delighted to learn that children in capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital L's hate tests. After you teach your students from the Operation Misteach manual, drill them on the ridiculous information you just fed them. When they're about to fall asleep, when the classroom is the most warm and stuffy, it's time to give them a long test. It's that simple. Bravo, bravo, shouted the teacher audience. Now word about grading, Miss Exam continued. Suppose after all the hard work you teachers have done lecturing and drilling, your students fail a test. Up to this point, an F was the worst grade you could give them. That's not fair to us teachers. I suggest adding G, H, and I grades, and if they still don't do well on their test, go right down the alphabet to Z. Thank you. Bravo, 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 cheered the teachers as Miss Exam sat down and Mrs. Goldstar returned to the podium. So, said the head teacher, now here's a little test for all you crabby teachers in the audience. I will ask a few questions about how important it is to treat the girls differently from boys in your class. First question, what subjects should you expect boys always to do better in than girls? A forest of arms flew in the air. The teachers groaned and squealed. Some stood up to make their hands go higher. It's important to choose the highest hand and the hand of the student who makes the goofiest noise, said Mrs. Goldstar. That is usually a boy, so I will call on Mr. Stapler. Mr. Stapler, in which subjects should you expect girls to do poorly? Math and science, said the teacher. Excellent, said Mrs. Goldstar. Math and science. Repeat that, please. Math and science, said the teachers. And I hope these girl juveniles before us never get any bright ideas that they can become an astronaut or engineer or a scientist. Nope. Those are jobs for men. And who are much better in math and science than Mrs. Goldstar? So, next question. What job would a boy be silly to consider when he grows up? The audience remained silent for a moment. No, then I'll give you a hint, said Mrs. Goldstar. This job is considered one of the most important jobs in the world, but only women have the gentleness and patience for it. Still no hands? Then I will tell you. You must make certain that boys in your class never consider becoming, ta-da, a kindergarten teacher. Hear, hear, shouted the teachers, followed by a great round of giggles. And so, said the head teacher, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the inventor of something else you should assign often in your new classroom. Let me introduce to you Mr. Homework. A tall man teacher stood and bowed. There's a lot of Operation Misteach information we want school children to learn, he announced, and we want them to learn it as fast as possible. I suggest you give your students at least 5 to 6 hours of extra work each night. Thank you. Wild cheers, hoots, and whistles, banging of chairs. Mrs. Goldstar waved her ruler again. It's now time to present our annual Gold Star Award, she called out. I wish to present this year's award to a teacher who has done much to put Operation Misteach into action. What is more, she managed to bring our own class here today for us to practice on. Lady and man teachers, I wish to present the Gold Star Award to Missy Racer. Missy Racer, alias Mrs. Gross, suddenly appeared from behind a curtain. There came a smattering of applause as Bradley's teacher walked up to the podium. She pinched the hem of her dress and curtsied to the head teacher. With great ceremony, Mrs. Goldstar pinned a large gold star on her chest. Thank you, head teacher. Thank you, fellow teachers out there, Mrs. Gross said, blowing kisses to the crowd. Thank you, especially to the 6 teachers I always needed in my work. Miss A, Miss E, Miss I, Miss O, Miss U, and sometimes Miss Y. I also wish to thank Mr. Verb, who kept me moving, and Mrs. Noun, the person, place, or thing who was most helpful to me. Thank you to my lovely poodle, Natasha, and to my goldfish, Sparky. Thank you, Mr. Racer, the head teacher interrupted, and Bradley's teacher backed off the stage, blowing more kisses. So, there you have it, teachers, said Mrs. Goldstar when the noises died down. Your training is complete. It is time to spread Operation Misteach across America. Onward to conquer the schools, onward to conquer the world. Misteach, 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 the teachers chanted. They hugged one another and patted one another on the back and did silly dances in the aisles. So, class of juveniles, bellowed the head teacher, go, proceed back to the bus. The rescue. Bradley's class marched out of the gym in the same robot-like fashion in which they had entered. Bradley still could not breathe too deeply, blink too much, or make a single sound, for the teachers were following the lines of students, dancing, laughing, and shouting, SCHOOLs out, SCHOOLs out. While the students filed onto the bus, the teachers wrestled, swung backpacks, turned cartwheels on the front lawn. Some recited a silly poem. No more students, no more books, no head teacher's dirty looks. As he climbed the bus stairs, Bradley caught Mr. Bus Driver's wink and sat in the front seat. In the rearview mirror, the driver mouthed the words, "Let's just get out of here," Bradley whispered. "I think some teachers plan on coming with us." Mr. Bus Driver pulled the door crank and the door slammed shut. He turned the ignition key and floored the gas pedal. Bang, bang went the motor. The rear wheels spun on the gravel before the bus finally moved forward. Please! Hundreds of teachers blew their whistles at once. The bus rattled past them and out of the parking lot. At last, Bradley let out a long breath. He turned to see an angry pack of teachers standing in front of the S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital L, shaking their fists at the escaping bus. The buildings of Teacher City swept by the bus windows in one red blur. Up Teacher Avenue, the bus tore, past Teacher Boulevard and onto the popsicle stick bridge. As it crossed over White River, Mr. Bus Driver called out, "Where are we going to? What are we going to do?" Bradley leaned forward. "What can we do against all those teachers?" he asked. "At school, I sometimes trick one teacher at a time, but here there are thousands after us." "Listen, young gentleman," he said. "Against all odds, you managed to cross this entire island alone. You found your class and rescued them from capital S, capital C, capital H, capital O, capital L. You certainly aren't the type of kid who gives up easily." Bradley continued to stare out the window. Yes, he was proud of what he had managed to do today. Early that morning, he had never imagined he had such ability. Wasn't that the word Miss Purdy wrote on his report card last year? Bradley has a lot of ability. However, he should apply himself more to his schoolwork. Bradley needs a challenge. Someday he will do great things. "Last year, Miss Purdy believed in me," Bradley said to the window. "And here on Apple Island, Mr. Janitor, Miss Secretary, Miss Library, and Mr. Bus Driver never doubted that I could come this far. Maybe I can stop all those crabby teachers. Maybe I can stop Operation Misteach." As the bus passed the big book building, a plan blinked in Bradley's brain faster than a flashcard answer. "Stop the bus," he commanded. "Mr. Bus Driver, I'm going to save the schools." The bus brakes squealed and the bald driver pulled the crank of the door. Even before the bus had stopped, Bradley flew out the door. He bounded up the big book building stairs 3 at a time. Miss Library sat behind the dusty checkout counter reading. "Come on, ma'am," he called to her. "I'm taking you out of here. We're leaving Apple Island." The woman dropped her books in the return box. "Hallelujah," she said. "I'm right with you, Bradley." Miss Library squinted at the sunlight as Bradley led her out the front door and onto the bus. "Step on it," the boy cried. Bang, bang! The yellow bus rolled down the great hallway, sputtering and backfiring. It rattled past Purple Lake and headed toward Chalk Mountain. Outside Office Palace, Bradley repeated, "Stop the bus!" He leaped off the bus again and sailed past the teacher guards. Act quickly, and sometimes teachers won't have time to react. That was his motto back at school, and it was working here as well. He was inside Office Palace before the teachers touched their whistles. Come on, he called to Miss Secretary. "We're busting out of here. Bus is waiting outside." "At last," said the pretty woman. Bradley burst into the throne room and came out dragging Prince Apple by the arm. "We're leaving Apple Island, Your Highness," Bradley told him. "We're all going." "Huh?" said Prince Apple. His wastebasket crown clanged to the floor as Bradley pulled him out the door. Miss Secretary flipped off her computer and ran after them. But no sooner was everyone back on the bus than alarms posted up and down the speckled tiled road, erupting with a tremendous burp, burp, burp. "That's the general Apple Island alarm," said Mr. Bus Driver. "Soon every teacher on the island will be trying to stop us." Sure enough, a mile farther down the great hallway, a tall barricade of desks and chairs blocked the road. The bus squealed to a stop. Before the mound of furniture stood a mob of gnarling, scowling, cursing, glaring, jeering, nostril-flaring, spitting, stomping, fist-shaking teachers. "There's the little troublemaker," one teacher shouted. "I have first dibs on him," called another. "You're going to sit with your head down on a hard desk for the rest of your life," threatened a third. Bradley turned toward the bus passengers. "When teachers get this worked up, they're hard to outsmart," he said, "but I think I know a way out of this." He whispered something into Prince Apple's ear. He pointed to Chalk Mountain close by and whispered some more. The prince flipped his tie through his fingers. "Oh," he said. "Ah." Things were tense as the two climbed from the bus. Prince Apple ran off toward the mountain. The teachers ignored the man just as they always had. Bradley stood alone as the fuming band of teachers swarmed around him. Step by step, they closed in. Bradley smiled and shrugged his shoulders. I really didn't mean to get out of line back there in Great Hallway, he said. It was an accident. Honest, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I promise never to do it again on my honor. Cross my heart, hope to die. It wasn't my fault. Why blame me? Someone made me do it. They dared me. Really, I didn't do it on purpose. By now, the teachers stood so close to Bradley that he could see hairs quivering in their noses. He smelled the coffee on their breath. Then a miracle. From high atop Chalk Mountain, a bell began to toll. Afternoon recess, one teacher immediately called out. Oh, goody, said another. It seems a bit early, but I can sure use a coffee break. I have dibs on the new basketball, said a third teacher. We'll deal with you later, Bradley. Stay right here. Don't do a thing until we get back. Then every teacher at the barricade took off in the direction of the grand playground. Bradley waved to the bus. Come on, everybody, he said. Recess is only 10 minutes long. We must get this road cleared. Mr. Bus Driver, Miss Secretary, and Miss Library piled off the bus. They began tossing the desks and chairs to the side of the road. Soon Prince Apple joined them. What just happened? Asked Miss Library, pushing a swivel chair into a ditch. Bradley is a true genius, Prince Apple said. He told me to pull the Chalk Mountain bell cord to make the teachers think it was recess time. I figured these crabby teachers would never pass up a coffee break, Bradley explained, no matter what they were doing. Back on the bus, Mr. Bus Driver revved up the motor and crushed the gas pedal. Where to next? He asked. We need to find Mr. Janitor, Bradley answered. I think I know a way to stop these crabby teachers from doing any misteaching ever again.